This video is intended for the new firearm owners on the block, but you may also be interested in this video if you like saving money, or maybe you're trying to build confidence with your firearm so that way you can better protect the people you care about most. You want to make sure you're training with your firearm because in a high stress situation, your adrenaline is pumping, you're not thinking straight, and you want the use of your firearm to become second nature. As you know, there's a pandemic going on, which is making it hard to find ammo. If you can find it, you're probably paying top dollar for it. But there's a solution to training at home without having to spend on ammo, and that is dry fire. We're going to be breaking up this video into topics. The first topic we're going to cover is safety, then we'll move into holsters, defeating your garment, grip, trigger control, sight picture, and lastly, reloading. So the first topic I want to cover is safety. So you want to be sure that whenever you're going to dry fire practice, you're doing it in a safe area. And by this, you want to make sure that your firearm is cleared and empty, and you empty the magazines that you're going to be using. Usually I designate 2 dry fire magazines to only dry fire, and I never load these with live ammunition just to make sure I'm being safe. If you want to be even more safe, what you can do is purchase snap caps. Now this snap cap is made by Azum. We do sell these up on the site. If you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description. Essentially what this is a fake bullet made out of solid aluminum, and it does have a silicone cap on the back to protect your striker or firing pin whenever you're dry firing. As you can see, this one I beat up a lot. I've had these for about 2 to 3 years, and I do love dry firing, so I put these through their paces. The next thing you want to make sure that you're doing is going slow with your movements, not only to be safe, but also to build good muscle memory and to build good habits. So on to the next topic, which is holsters and holster positions. Now a holster is part of the equipment that you're going to need to start dry firing. So if you don't have a holster already, don't worry, because you can find them at omahaoutdoors.com. Everything that you see here in front of me is available on the website. So let's get into the 2 terms of holsters. You're going to come across 2 terms which are IWB and OWB. IWB stands for inside the waistband holster, such as this squared away holster that I have here. It has a single clip and a single piece of Kydex that wraps around the entire firearm, and it covers the trigger guard. These inside the waistband holsters were designed to be carried between your body and your belt. Most of the time, inside the waistband holsters are used for concealed carrying. The other type of holster is an outside the waistband holster, or OWB holster. This crossbreed holster has belt loops on the side, so that way you can carry on your hip or outside the waistband. Not to say that you can't conceal with an outside the waistband holster, you just have to make sure that you're wearing large enough clothing, such as loose shirts or maybe a heavy jacket, to make sure that you're not printing. Then you have your dual purpose holsters, which can be converted to either or. It is another crossbreed holster, and as you can see, it has the clips in the front, so it's meant to be worn inside the waistband. But it does come with the belt loop clips, so that way you can convert this into an outside the waistband holster. Now onto the positions of where you can wear these holsters. So the first position that I'm going to talk about is appendix carry. Appendix carry was meant to be worn between your 1 o'clock and your 11 o'clock positions, depending on whether you're a right-handed or left-handed shooter. Now appendix carry isn't for everybody. It's mostly meant for the people that have skinnier builds. If you do have a beer belly like me, you can get away with it, but I'm going to tell you right now, it does get uncomfortable after about 2 hours or maybe a long road trip. Appendix carry is mostly for people that want to try and conceal their firearm. Now, if you're not comfortable with having a gun pointed at your junk, you might be more interested in 4 o'clock carry or 8 o'clock carry. At the 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock positions, you can conceal carry or open carry. It's mostly meant for open carry, but you can get away with concealing a firearm as long as you're wearing large clothing or maybe a large jacket. The only thing you want to make sure is that you're not printing. Now printing is something that I'll get to in a minute. The last position is 6 o'clock carry. Most of the time if you're going to 6 o'clock carry, it's only because you want to conceal your firearm, so you're going to be carrying inside the waistband. I don't recommend 6 o'clock carry only because of the drawbacks. Now you can get away with carrying a bigger firearm in the smaller your back, and maybe it might be more comfortable, but the drawbacks are if you're sitting down and you have your firearm at 6 o'clock, you either need to bend forward or get completely up to access your firearm. Now, in a stressful situation, this may be dangerous because you're presenting yourself to a threat at that point. It's also very uncomfortable and slow to draw from. Appendix carry is the fastest to draw from only because it's right in front of you and all you have to do is drop your arms. 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock are the second best because you just have to reach to your sides. And 6 o'clock is the most awkward and slowest position because you're reaching behind you. Now I talked about printing. What is printing? Printing is when you're trying to conceal a firearm under your clothing and you can see the outline of it through your shirt or whatever piece of clothing you're wearing. Now, you may not be able to tell that it's a gun under my shirt, but it does look unnatural and you can definitely tell that I'm trying to hide something. The good thing about trying to conceal carry and printing is you really don't have to worry about printing as much as you think you do, only because not a whole lot of people have situational awareness these days. Unless somebody's concealed carrying, because usually people who are concealed carrying have really good situational awareness, or at least they should. But it's not something you should be paying attention to. So you don't have to worry about printing, plus you bring attention to yourself if you're constantly looking down to make sure that you're not printing. Printing is something that can be combated with loose clothing or more layers, which leads me into my next topic. The next topic we're going to cover is overcoming your garment. In simple terms, it just means moving your clothes out of the way so that way you can gain access to your firearm. Now, this is going to be different for everyone because everybody lives in a different climate. So it's really dependent on what you're going to be wearing. People who live in colder climates are probably going to be wearing more layers than people who live in warmer climates, which are probably going to be in shorts and a t-shirt. So you want to make sure that you're training with whatever you're going to be wearing. So this is a jacket that I wear most whenever it gets cold outside. I do have a concealed carry holster under here, so I'm just going to demonstrate basically what overcoming the garment looks like. It's not complicated. All you have to do is grab all your layers from the bottom and pull straight up. That way you can gain access to your firearm and draw. Whenever you're going to reholster, make sure that you're looking down. That way you can ensure nothing's going to get inside the trigger guard and pull the trigger. It's the same thing if you're trying to carry a firearm at 4 o'clock. You want to make sure that you're moving your jacket out of the way or your shirt, draw, and whenever you're going to reholster, again, make sure you're looking down to ensure nothing is getting inside the trigger guard and is going to pull the trigger. The next topic we're going to cover is how to properly grip your firearm. This is really important for accuracy and also controlling recoil. So you want to make sure that you're doing it properly. The first thing I'm going to say is please don't teacup the pistol because this provides you no support or no stability. It's no better than shooting the gun one-handed. Unless you're shooting a revolver, but most of the time for magazine-fed pistols, you want to make sure you're gripping it properly. So there's a tang or beaver tail on the gun, and usually the goal is to try and get as high as you possibly can, as close to the slide as you possibly can on the gun. And by this, the gun is going to sit between your thumb and index finger right inside the notch. So I usually like to explain this by turning a doorknob and transitioning my hand into a hitchhiker's thumb on the gun. So I come in, turn the doorknob, and get my hitchhiker's thumb as high as I can. As you can see, there's no gap between the skin and the beaver tail of the gun, and I'm as high as I possibly can. If you did it right, you're gonna have a bunch of space on the side of the gun, and that's where your support hand goes. To explain my support hand, I do a counterclockwise motion into the gun and I point my thumb forward. So if I can demonstrate, I do a karate chop into the trigger guard and turn the doorknob, rest my thumb on the frame pointed forward, and my fingers naturally rest on the knuckles of my strong hand. This is what a proper grip should feel like. You want to make sure that you're also gripping harder with your support hand than you are with your strong hand. This is because if you're tense with your strong hand, you're pulling the trigger, you're not going to be able to move your finger as fast as you can. It's also really important that you lock your wrists, or else you're going to be limp wristing and you're going to be causing a lot of malfunctions. I have had a bunch of beginners come to me and say that their guns are broken or they don't like them because they're getting a bunch of malfunctions. Most of the case, it's because the shooter is limp wristing, and that is when you allow the gun to move freely instead of locking your wrist solid, so that way the gun just moves back and forth or up and down. Essentially what you're doing when you limp wrist is you're acting as a buffer for the slide and you're not allowing the full inertia of the slide to move back and forth, which doesn't cycle the gun, and that's why you get malfunctions such as stovepiping and failures to feed. If you want a detailed explanation on grip, go check out instructors like Tony Cowden or Robert Vogel. Robert Vogel came out with a really detailed video on how he likes to grip his pistols, which I'll link right here. Tony Cowden likes to give out free tips on how to grip pistols, and I actually got this one from him. Imagine getting a horseshoe and trying to bend it apart. Same thing with the gun. If you get your proper grip, you're trying to bend the horseshoe out, and that actually helps you get even more contact on the side of the gun. The next topic I'm going to cover is trigger control. Trigger control is really important for accuracy, and it's one of the things that I see beginners having the most trouble with. So what I see most people do is, and I had this problem too, you actually yank the trigger. And while you're yanking the trigger, you just pull straight back. You're moving the gun either right or left. I'm gonna show you how to properly manipulate the trigger. First off, if you put light pressure on the trigger, you're gonna notice that there's some slack or what's called take-up. Most triggers have this, but if you have something like a competition trigger, an upgraded trigger, there are triggers out there that eliminate the take-up and you are on the wall as soon as you press on the trigger. And a lot of videos out there talk about breaking from the wall or getting on the wall before you actually pop that shot off. And what that means is put light pressure on your trigger face until you come to a stopping point. Now here you feel like you've been stopped, you can't pull the trigger any further unless you apply heavier pressure. This is what it means to be on the wall. So once you get to this point, you know you're on the wall. After you apply heavier pressure from this point, that means that your gun is either gonna go off, but since we're in dry fire right now, it's only gonna click. So I apply heavy pressure and it clicks. So now the trigger is pinned to the rear. And the only way to get it to move forward, or at least on a Glock or a striker fired pistol, is resetting the slide. There's springs in here that help assist move the trigger forward. So if you reset the gun and you let off the trigger, there's springs that push the trigger forward. You heard that click and now you're back on the wall again. So a lot of shooters out there are actually realizing that it's bad to pin the trigger to the rear. And by that, you have the trigger held back, the gun is cycled, and you hear that distinctive click and you're back on the wall again. There's nothing wrong with this, but what a lot of people are starting to realize is that you have more control if you actually reset the trigger during the cycle of the gun. So for example, I'm gonna try and demonstrate here. No distinctive click, I'm back on the wall and I'm ready to fire. When you're done firing, you want to make sure that you take your finger off the trigger and index it as high as you can on the gun. This is called good trigger discipline, and you're going to make a lot of people happy as beginners if you do practice this whenever your eyes leave your sights. The next topic we're going to talk about is sight picture. Now, sight picture is really important for accuracy, and it's the one that I practice the most during dry fire. This is what a proper sight picture looks like. Your front post is in focus while your rear sight and your target are out of focus. You want to make sure whenever you punch out that you see your sights consistently. Now, if you don't see your sights consistently, it's probably because you're a cross-dominant shooter, and I had this problem personally. What this means is that your strong hand is opposite of your better eye. So in my case, my strong hand is my right hand and my better eye is my left eye. The best way to figure this out is grab your gun and punch out with your eyes closed. Do this over and over again until you're consistently going to the same spot. Now open your eyes. If you feel like you have to turn your head to the right or turn your head to the left, then this means you're a cross-dominant shooter. And there's two ways to combat this. You can either punch the gun out in front of your dominant eye, or you can punch out where your body naturally wants to go and then turn your head either left or right. For me, I have to turn my head to the right so that way I can be in line with my sights, in line with my target, and in line with my body. There are two types of focuses for sight picture. There's front sight focus and hard target focus. Front sight focus is best for accuracy and long range shooting, even though you're probably not going to be shooting your pistol past 15 yards. Hard target focus is best for when the target is within 7 yards and closer. This is mostly used for speed shooting or defensive shooting. Although most of the time you want to make sure that you're using a front sight focus. When I dry fire, I practice sight picture the most because you want to make sure that you're seeing your sights consistently. This will help you shoot faster because the faster you see your sights, the faster you can pull the trigger. So make sure you get those reps in. That way you can consistently see your sights on target. I usually use a light switch or a teddy bear. That way I have a target in the background that I'm pointing my sights to. And now to the final topic of reloading. As a beginner, you want to make sure you familiarize yourself with the two functions for reloading of your firearm. This is called a magazine release, and this is called a slide lock or slide release lever. This lever is what locks the slide back to the rear whenever you're out of ammunition. Whenever you want to eject the magazine from your firearm, make sure that you press the mag release button and the magazine will fall out. There are two types of reloads. There's an emergency slide lock reload or speed reload. This is when the slide is locked back to the rear on an empty mag. Then there's a tactical reload. You use this whenever you've been shooting and you don't know how many rounds you've shot, but you want to make sure that your gun is topped off. So what you do is you switch mags with a full mag. That way your gun is completely full. It doesn't matter what reload you're doing, you want to make sure that you're indexing your finger on the front spine of the magazine. That way you have full control and you're not fumbling your reloads. Now I'm going to simulate a slide lock reload. So the slide is locked back to the rear. I bring my gun in what's called the workspace. I usually anchor my armpit and my elbow close to my body. That way the gun is consistently in the same place every single time. I eject the old mag as I'm simultaneously indexing my finger on my fresh mag, insert, and there's two ways of sending the slide home. You can either grab over the top and slingshot it back, or you can press the slide release. Then you can punch out and you're back on target. Now I'm gonna simulate a tactical reload. I've been shooting and I don't know how many rounds I have left, so I wanna make sure that my gun is topped off with ammo. I index on my new mag and transition into a pinch grip between my middle finger and my index finger. This allows me to grab my old mag with my thumb and between my index finger. So I release the old mag, insert the new mag. Now I have my old mag and I can stow it away in a mag carrier or on the table, and I get back on target. This is how you do a tactical reload. Now you want to make sure that you're training both during dry fire because there are certain situations where you will need one or the other. So make sure that you're training both of them. And now we're going to recap everything that we learned today. So you want to make sure that you're getting a nice high grip on your pistol. You fill in the empty space with your support hand. Once you get your grip, you punch out and you take away the slack on your trigger until you get to the wall. Once you feel the wall, make sure your sights are aligned and your front sight is on your target. Press through the trigger and you want to do a reload now. So you come into your workspace and your anchor point, press the mag release to eject the old mag, index on the new mag, insert, and get back on target. So there it is, guys. We hope that you enjoyed watching. We hope you got some good tips out of this video. That way you can get started with dry fire and save money. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. If not, then like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.